like that as like a director and a maker is like unlike anything else because everything is intentional and like everything is done for a certain reason. So when like the crowd and the people around you pick up on that and like come up to you after and like tell you how much they liked it or like the direction you took, like there's something really special about that and like affirming as a maker that's like, okay, I want to keep doing this and I want to keep making things and putting them out in the world.
We are so ambitious with the things that we plan. Like, I mean, the end of the outcome of the film is one thing. Like you'll see it and you're like, oh, that must have taken a while. But like our plans for every film ended up being so much more than what actually happens. And like trying to work through these like crazy like big ideas like, oh, let's do this film and let's just like write it out. And then it's like 6 sets and like 5 different times a day.
Like, I know for Hawkshaw 2 specifically, I would be like laying in bed and then I would just suddenly start panicking and I'll just get up and text all this like, what happened with this? What happened to this? Like, we forgot this. And then we would like scramble for the next day to resolve that issue.
Our films are so inspired by like what is happening to us in the moment, like the classes that we're taking and the movies that we just watched, and like even like I think like I watched her like more recently over the summer, and then immediately afterwards we were like, let's make a more personal, like, you know, emotional film, which is what we're working on now.
The lesson I would tell myself is don't discourage yourself and don't shoot down your own ideas. You should just go for you should just go for a concept that you think would turn out to be a good film, and you shouldn't really discourage yourself and scare yourself into backing down from a what you think it could be a really hard task.
First, why don't y'all just like introduce yourself?
Okay, I'll go first then. My name's Andrew. I'm a junior at Green Hill School. Um, I guess since we're on the film topic, I've been part of Green Hill's advanced video production since sophomore year. I make productions with Ali, who's in this interview, and we run the Cats with Mustaches production group. So yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, I guess I'll go second because we're kind of paired up in terms of film experience. I'd say Andrew and I are about like 1 for 1. So yeah, I was part of the AVP group since sophomore year. We both actually took a video production class in freshman year. Um, yeah, and I did co-run Cats with Mustaches. You should follow us on Instagram.
That's a great plug. What about you, Claire?
I'm Claire. I'm also a junior. I've been part of AVP since I was a sophomore as well. I kind of just like the same way. I just stumbled into upper school video production and decided I wanted to pursue it. And since we're plugging ourselves, go follow Claire Makes Films on Instagram.
You should
Awesome.
follow us first. Just
So, first question is kind of uh, Andrew, Ali, you guys have just finished Hawkshaw 2, and Claire, you finished the pig one a bit ago that I can't quite recall the name. Can you remind me of what the name
Big
was?
mistake.
Pig Mistakes, yeah.
Yeah.
You guys all finished that pretty recently. What kind of inspired you to make those films?
Hawkshaw 1 primarily.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
All
Yeah.
right, then what inspired you to make Hawkshaw 1?
Um,
It
I
was. Oh no, you go.
yeah, I think it was like a number of things. I remember like a very distinct point of sophomore year where I was like, we should totally make a detective film. And then that like God, like we have a lot of different planning documents. I think a lot of the like inspiration stylistically came from the show Cowboy Bebop, and we borrowed a lot of naming conventions and character themes and stuff from that. But like, I don't know. I think like a lot of it was also just inspired from like situational jokes and bits and stuff that like made us laugh at the time.
Yeah, it was fairly ambitious, and it was mainly based off of like things we found cool based on like previous media that we've watched. Like Cowboy Bebop was definitely a bbig one, just because its soundtrack was very jazzy, and that's kind of what brought us into that. And so our Hawkshaw 1 and 2, well, mainly Hawkshaw 1, it's built heavily off of Cowboy Bebop, and then Hawkshaw 2, we kind of grew independent, like same characters, but we came up with our own premise, and it was all, again, like Ali said, built off of a bit that we thought would be funny if we turned into a film. So
So I was gonna say for my most recent one that I finished, Pig Mistake initially was something I just like kind of fell into because I got COVID the week we started production. So I had to like it was for we were doing like a mini project and I felt like I had to contribute in some way. So I got these two stuffed animals. I had these like mini frozen pancakes and I think it had just been my birthday. So I stuck like a little candle in the pancakes and set up this little scene of these two stuffed animals and it just happened from there and that's become my niche. So my last film also involved a caterpillar. So it's a niche at this point. It's just a thing that happens in all of my films, I guess, now.
Yeah, and you guys' films have become like recognized not only through Gleano but also like in other kind of what is it, film contests and stuff like ISAS. Can y'all tell me about that a bit?
I don't want to like flatter myself. I only got like accepted into one film festival, so like, but it was really nice to like hear people's commentary on like what they thought worked about the film outside of like the Green Hill realm, and it was really cool. But yeah, that was like one really cool thing, like piece of recognition.
yeah, one thing I really really liked was when our film screened at ISAS. That was really fun because you could kind of just tell based on like visual feedback from the audience what parts they liked, what parts they were confused about, and what parts they thought were funny. And I feel like that helped us in the production side of things for the later films a lot. And overall, it was just really cool, just like hearing other people in AVP and just people outside of Green Hill in general just talk about the film. Sometimes people came up to us and was like, "Hey, I really liked it. We do have some feedback for you." Like a bunch of film students did that, and that felt really awesome going into Hawkshaw 2 because then we could build off of our previous mistakes.
I'll say Hawkshot 2 was in a prime pre-award state. Um, so I don't want to say unawarded because surely we'll get something. But in all honesty, I also don't think Hawkshot is the kind of film to like get recognition at award ceremonies. Uh, that being said, like in terms of like people seeing the film and people knowing us, that's been a really like fun surprise. Like when you get approached by like underclassmen, you're like, "Hey, did you guys make Aksha?" Or "Oh my God, it's Cats with Mustaches!" Like, or like talking to like younger AV peers and being like, "Hey, do you want to help us with this, or do you want to come on set for this, or like write a script?" And they'll be like, "Oh my God, for Cats with Mustaches!" Like there was some point where people knew what we were, and that was a really cool bridge to cross.
Yeah. And for everyone that doesn't go to like an independent school, ISAS is just a big independent school showcase, I think is what the acronym stands for. Just a bunch of independent schools in like the DFW area and the North Texas area that kind of come together for a big arts festival. They got tons of stuff there, uh, particularly like film screenings. Um, you mentioned like Andy, you and Ali mentioned like the feedback you were able to get at ISAS. How do you think like getting feedback from film students or from like Doyle has kind of helped you move forward with your filmmaking?
Oh my God, it's helped so much. Like, we usually screen the film in AVP and then we make some tweaks and then send them off to festivals. So during that first stage, it's really helpful because sometimes by the time we've reached that stage, we've seen our film so many times that we've tuned out like all possible problems that we haven't seen. So just getting another set of eyes to look at it and tell you just what they think from initially watching the movie, that feels really, really good. Because then you get, I mean, I've already said this, you get like another perspective on your project. And then after ISAS, it was good because it's kind of a jumping off point. Like you're there and you're like, okay, what now? I've done this stuff that people liked, this stuff that people didn't like too much. So building off of that, what should I do for my next project? So it was really good for, I guess, overall feedback for future projects. And yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a big thing of like getting feedback while trying to maintain your own personal, like, okay, like in a theoretical world you could have made any film, you could have made anything, but there's a reason that you chose to make that one thing. And so there's like quality feedback, and then there's like personal stuff, and I can say that a lot of the time we'll be like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but also no, shut up and don't talk to us. Like, um I don't know, especially with the first one. And the second one we definitely opened up a little, but like, and even in terms of how we produce, uh i I was talking to another film maker, Max, the other day, and like in like, a reflection, we shoot with very few people on set, and especially very few people that aren't like a huge part of the project and already agree with us on everything. And we do so much planning beforehand that, like, before the film is screened, there's not really much time for other people to see and review it. So when other people do see it, and when we get that like flood of like comments and feedback, that's really important to sift through there and like, and try and find ones that can add to the film rather than like, you know diminishing our own personal like kind of touches here and there.
Is it my turn to talk?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
sorry. I didn't wanted me to like chime in. Yeah, ISAS was like a really pivotal point for me personally because I had always been super anxious about showing my film to people. This was a film that I made that didn't feel very like authentic to who I was. It kind of felt like I was rushing and trying to get something done. So for a while I was doubting myself, and I was doubting that it would even get finished and I would have like a finished product to show at ISAS. I like tried to talk Doyle out of showing it for a while and he wouldn't. So, but I'm very glad he did because that kind of gave me a sense of like there was something so magical about like being in a room with people that you can just like watch them react to every aspect of your film. Like that as like a director and a maker is like unlike anything else because everything is intentional and like everything is done for a certain reason. So when like the crowd and the people around you pick up on that and like come up to you after and like tell you how much they liked it or like the direction you took, like there's something really special about that and like affirming as a maker that's like, okay, I want to keep doing this and I want to keep making things and putting them out in the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. And clearly, you mentioned like you didn't expect that it would finish. What are some challenges that all of y'all have like faced in the filmmaking process, both for like the older ones and the newer films?
I would say the biggest of all for me and for a lot of other filmmakers I've talked to is like doubting yourself. Like I was talking to Pierce actually, who's another like really esteemed AP peer, and he was like, hating your own film is a rite of passage. And it's so true. Like you sometimes just hate the things you make so much to the point where like that's the motivation, if it makes sense. Like I don't know if that you know but like it's so much of it is self-doubt and having to get over that hurdle of like everyone's gonna hate this. It's like, okay, well, it's something that I made that I'm putting out here and there's something special about that regardless of how other people react to it.
Yeah, I think like I can think of two like really big challenges that we come up across, and the first one tends to be like, we are so ambitious with the things that we plan. Like, I mean, the end of the outcome of the film is one thing. Like, you'll see it and you're like, oh, that must have taken a while. But like our plans for every film ends up being so much more than what actually happens, and like trying to work through these like crazy like big ideas, like, oh, let's do this film and let's just like write it out, and then it's like 6 sets and like 5 different times a day, and we have to like manage this like logistic. we're we shoot things, we're not logistics people, and so that tends to be a real hassle. And I think the second one is, there's like a especially during production, there's like a weight you feel in pre-production. There's a weight you feel over your head, like when you have the base outline of a story or a script or an aesthetic. You're like, I don't want to blow this. Like Andrew and I were just talking about this for our next film. Like, we're like reading through. Fern wrote the script for this. We're reading through it. We're planning it out, storyboarding it, and we're like looking at each other and just like, man, this script is like literally like the script is gold, and if we fumble this, that would be the worst thing ever. And so like just that like pressure that you put on yourself to like make something good is a big challenge.
Yeah, I think building off of the point about storyline, another issue we have is, like Ali said, our concepts or our ideas are way too big. Like we have really, really ambitious ideas, and there are some like Hawkshaw, which was a very, very ambitious idea initially, that we can hone down to like these I guess more compact and more nuanced ideas. But one issue that we have is that we have major plot points, like if character A does this here and then the second plot point is like an event happens, we have trouble like getting from point A to point B. And that's, I think that's one of the issues that we had. What sorry, my mind is blanking right now. It's the transition between major points in the film, like being able to fluff out your film to make it an ideal length. I'm not entirely sure what I'm
No,
trying to say
no,
here,
like
but
like I our original plan for Hawkshow was like a 7 episode like TV show. It was like this
yeah,
long
yeah.
form, like it was gonna be crazy, and we had everything planned out and like character arcs and themes, and what ended up being Hawkshow 2 ended up being like 3 episodes like merged together, and like all these different plot points. And I think what you're trying to say is like when we crush everything together like that, we can miss stuff that'll lead to these major plot holes that we're just like, or we're only there to serve the larger purpose that ends up getting drowned out when it becomes like an 8-minute film or however long. Was it 8 minutes? Like an eight
Yeah,
minute
it
film,
was eight.
three.
Yeah, and then secondly is pre-production. I think we stress ourselves out way too much. Like I know for Hawkshaw 2 specifically, I would be like laying in bed and then I would just suddenly start panicking and I'll just get up and text all this like, what happened with this? What happened to this? Like we forgot this. And then we would like scramble for the next day to resolve that issue. And I feel like that honestly wasn't healthy. And then on top of that, just shows that we missed a little too much stuff during pre-production. So I think the challenge of just being able to account for every single thing that you need and then every scenario that could come up is really, really difficult.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you all watch a lot of like stuff. I know Andy, you like do film reviews on your Instagram and stuff of the movies that you do watch. So what like filmmakers or what kind of movies would you say influenced your process? I know you mentioned Cowboy Bebop.
This is a really hard question. I think for Hawkshaw, it was mainly that and a little bit of what's the name? The new Blade Runner. A little bit of the new Blade Runner, especially for the second Hawkshaw. Like, if you've seen it, there's a shot where the main character Reeves is standing in front of a bunch of trees in a park in the middle of the night, and there's Christmas lights and these like really shiny lights just glowing from the trees. I think we pulled a lot from Blade Runner, especially for that scene. And I know for the costume design, um, we pulled from Blade Runner, especially for Reeves's outfit. And then I didn't really talk with Ali about this, but I also pulled from like Tarkovsky, the director of Stalker, and then a little bit from the movie Her, just for costume design and visuals as well. And for our most recent production, I think it's the one we're working on right now. I think we pulled from Ali, correcting me if I'm wrong. Grand Budapest, Her again, and just like more intimate kind of personal movies.
Yeah, yeah. I think um I don't know. I've had this like theory for a long time. I hate to get like philosophical in the middle of like a interview. I've had this theory like running around the back of my head that like when you're making something, you strive to be like original. But what actually happens is deterministic of all of the like art and media and things that you consume and see, and like, you know, and every aspect of your person and yourself is original because you have like these original experiences. um and so I guess what I'm trying to say is that like we have these like very specific films we'll draw from specific plot points, but I think one of the big things is we just like our films are so inspired by like what is happening to us in the moment, like the classes that we're taking and the movies that we just watched, and like even like I think like I watched her like more recently over the summer, and then immediately afterwards we were like, let's make a more personal, like, you know, emotional film, which is what we're working on now. Or not during the summer, during the whatever the last break, I think winter break. Yeah, the holiday break after Haksha. Um, and so like it's hard going back and thinking about Haksha what those inspirations were like. But for this one it's a lot of like music we're listening to, and I think if I had to name a piece of like Andrew um was showing me this Rachmaninoff's second concerto, which was like a huge like if it's like this big climactic buildup to like this just really emotional like restatement of a melody, and it's just like it captures the essence. So anyways, like I guess what I'm trying to say is there's so much like stuff we're consuming on a daily basis that's informing our films, and I don't know, it's hard to answer that question because of that, I think.
I was gonna say, in terms of like films that I took inspiration for, I wouldn't say for my last project it was a specific like actually it was a student film. Doyle showed us this film of this student who now goes to NYU Tisch that made this really beautiful like narrative experimental film, and the lighting in it was so intentional that I just like pulled the idea of like blue and green lighting. I think I definitely took it from that. He also had a title that was long, and I thought that was so cool. Like the title of his film was so long, so my film, I was like, I want to do a long title, so I made it Stone Caterpillar and things that make sense in the grand scheme of living. And it was like that experimental, like focused on like the essence of life and feelings and emotions and like blue lighting. So I very much derived like a lot of inspiration from that. And yeah, it's just a whole lot of like feeling. I feel like that's it, like Ollie and Andrew were saying, like it's very indicative of what you're going through at the time, and that comes out in your art. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And um, I guess just like what do you look for going forward? You mentioned in Hasha to Ollie and Andrew, you mentioned kind of being a lot more open to feedback. What do you think like this ISAS is going to do for the next film, and what do you think this next film is going to look for? Same thing for you, Claire.
I think um it's probably during ISAS looking out for the visual feedback that the audience gives. Like we were for Hawkshaw, we would look at when people would laugh and then go back and then analyze those parts of the film and say, oh, like they probably like this, and this. And that would inspire like techniques we would use on the later films. So what we're looking for this ISAS is just like I think the overall mood of how people feel. Like if it's not the mood we're going for, we know that somewhere along the way of writing the story or like conveying the story in the film we did something wrong. So it's probably a good way of honing down like what we need to fix for our next film.
Yeah, I think an interesting part about the artistic process is that like you're speaking in an abstract vocabulary. So when I tell you something right now, it comes across super concrete and clear. But if I show you a film, it's like it could mean something entirely different to you than it means when I'm like writing it. And especially since now we're starting to work with other people and like there's so many intentions at play. You know, I think an important part about ISAS and screening and watching people is that like I I'm curious how our films are going to be received by people that don't know like why they were made or what we were thinking about when we put these things down. Um, as for plans looking forward, I think we definitely want to branch out more. As we work, we tend to go bigger and bigger and bigger, and I don't know. It's part of the hating your own films mindset that you have to go all out next time, and so yeah, it's kind of just going to be a compounding thing. So we're definitely going to be more open to feedback moving forwards, because that's just like that's I mean, like, how else do you learn, you know? But that's all we have right now. I think we're kind of just in the moment on our project otherwise.
I definitely think going forward, because a lot of my sets have been like me moving stuffed animals, which sounds really sad if you think about it. So I'm trying to like branch out in terms of like people on set. I'm definitely trying to stray away from stuffed animals. I remember another AVPer told me, he was like, you need to make films with real people. And I was like, got it. Next thing, I'm making a film with like a stuffed caterpillar. So I'm definitely going to move more into that. And also, I'm hoping to go bigger scale for like reels in college. I know that sounds bad, but like just focusing on like what is going to be like the lasting like story that I make in my last year of high school. And I want that to be something that like touches people. Because that's really special to me, that my like work has meaning to me and like other people can derive meaning for that, because I think that's so important. Like we take inspiration from things other people make that make us feel, and then we are then empowered to make things that make other people feel. So
Yeah, that's pretty much what all of us want to do. And I think y'all are definitely already kind of doing that with the films you're making. So you still got like another year ahead of you. Can't wait to see how that happens. And for like underclassmen that are looking to kind of go into filmmaking, or for people in like middle school or even younger that are like, hey, I think video production could be interesting. What kind of lessons would you give them? What kind of lessons would you give yourself back then if you could talk to yourself?
I think the lesson I would tell myself is don't discourage yourself and don't shoot down your own ideas. You should just go for you should just go for a concept that you think would turn out to be a good film, and you shouldn't really discourage yourself and scare yourself into backing down from a what you think it could be a really hard task.
Yeah, I mean, like I feel like there's a lot of things I would tell myself at the beginning of this, but uh I want to give like two kind of paradoxical things. And the first is like listen to other people more than you think you should, but also trust yourself more than you think you should. There's a level of like being authentic to a point where you're authentically creating something of poor quality because you don't know any better. And like to create good art that is authentic, you have to make sure your authentic self is, good and in the right place. And that means like, you know, keeping it being observant and listening and understanding points of view and perspective and like and what this all like means, and like trying to grasp an opinion on that before you can actually start saying something. So,
I was say I actually have a list in my notes app of things I would tell young filmmakers, because I think like I would have needed to hear so much of that as like just starting out. I would say stop being so hard on yourself. Like I always thought I had to outdo everyone around me. And that was my downfall, like focusing on other people instead of focusing on myself and focusing on, oh, is this film gonna impress this person, is this film gonna impress Doyle, is it gonna get into a festival? Like that mindset in and of itself is so faulty, because you should be focusing on what you want as a maker. And I would also say don't settle. Like if something on your set isn't the way you want it to be, within reason, of course, like don't settle and don't make choices because you feel like you're on a time constraint or you have to. I'm like a very big advocate of that, because my first film that I ever produced in AVP was something that I like was not proud of, that I definitely think I did settle. I was just like, I pulled an idea out and I was like, let's do that. And it's so important to be intentional about your art. So like if there is something that you want and someone, for instance, gives you feedback and is like, I don't like that, and you do, keep it in. Like because you're the maker, and you can always veto other people's feedback within reason. So I digress.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And final question here. You guys have been awesome. What are like some of your regrets looking back at what you did for the first 2.5 years of filmmaking?
Hawkshaw won.
Yeah, and I think on top of Hawkshaw 1, like not reaching out sooner, I think one of the reasons why Ali said Hawkshaw 1 is just because we fumbled the script writing and the story a bit just because we didn't reach out to other AV peers. And I feel like if we did that earlier, we would have done a better job with that film. And it's definitely something that we're gonna be doing in our final year in AVP.
Yeah, I think it was like a really educational experience, but also like we early on trapped ourselves into this thinking that we were going to devote ourselves to this project for 3 years, and like that was the worst move we could. And I think the best thing we could have done was make Hawkshot 2 and just be like, okay, we're done from here on out, which is what we've done now. But like, they're like no more Hawkshaw because like I don't know. In this early of a stage of like, our lives and our like participation in this like medium is you need to be open to everything. Like don't like box yourself in so quickly, especially if your plan is to make like an 8 episode or even worse, our first plan, which was to make a feature length Hawkshaw film, which was an awful plan, and I'm so glad we didn't do it. So yeah, that's the regret so far. Come back to us later. We'll probably have some more after this next one.
The minute you said that, I was like, oh God, because there is absolutely so much about this process and these last like 3 years that I regret. But I think the biggest thing of all was like the way I started to take filmmaking so seriously in terms of like the way I used to just make things for fun and because it made me laugh. And now I was like, now I have to be NYU level all the time. And like the minute you lose that aspect of like creativity and like almost like being a kid, like the idea of like making films when you're a child because they're fun and you're just laughing. Like those are the best sets, or the sets where you're just constantly laughing. So I would say like taking myself too seriously and not letting myself just like enjoy the process, because often like when you are enjoying the process and you are like laughing and just like doing whatever and having a great time, like that's when the product is most authentic and you look back on that and you're like, wow, that was so much fun to make.
Yeah, that's I'm kind of out of words to say here because that's been like so insightful, and I don't want to follow that up with something that sounds dismissive. But thank you all so much for this. That's been super, super like insightful, super um helpful for people that are trying to get into it, and maybe people that are just looking for the outside in and trying to understand like what made you want to do it and how you like looking forward with it. So thank you all so much. Y'all have been awesome. And yeah, uh check out Cats with Mustaches, check out Clear Makes Films.
Yeah,
Watch
yeah.
Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram.
New film
And
coming
go
soon.
too, if you're
Yeah,
cool.
new film.
Also follow Green Hill AVP. There's a bunch of other people that I couldn't get into this thing that are also incredible and deserving of your time and watching it. So go check those people out.
Come see our real ISAS. We're better than everyone else for a reason.
Yeah, yeah. Also, if you have time, check the Vimeo, Green Hill AVP Vimeo. There's all
Yeah.
sorts of like
We also have a
really.
website that
Oh
hasn't been
yeah,
updated
AVP.life.
in 7
AVP.life.
years.
AVP.life. There's just
Click
some.
on the wholesome and you'll find some really great films.
No,
There's just some
don't do
weirdly
that. Don't listen
insightful
to
stuff.
her.
If you
Don't
know,
listen
you
to her.
know.
Yeah, wait, no, don't listen to that.
Don't do it.
Well, thank you guys so much, and I guess I'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.